Welcome to another episode of the Daily Pour. My name is Raj Patel, also known as the Bourbon Guru. Namaste. You know my quest, a unique pour each day, no repeats. Please subscribe to my channel, share with your friends so you can join me on this daily journey. A new experience, a new pour each day. I'm hoping you're watching this episode with the bourbon in your hand also. So we've had 3 episodes. I've learned how to do my YouTube channel. I've learned how to make these videos. So I want to start a series of episodes. I want to talk about my journey in bourbon. So today I'm going to start with which bourbon started this journey with me. Think back in your journey of bourbon. What was that first bourbon that did it for you? That you really remember today? And he said, I remember that bourbon. So for me, it was back in 2009. Prior to 2009, I enjoyed bourbon at a friend's house. I enjoyed bourbon at a restaurant or a bar, but I really didn't have a collection of my own. So in my last house, we had a smaller bar, and I decided I'm going to go out and buy myself a bourbon. I go to the local liquor store. I buy this bottle, $18. What could go wrong? $18. I went home. I opened that bottle. That weekend, I poured myself a glass, and wow, I loved that bourbon. I remember distinctly telling my wife, Jackie, what a great bourbon it was for $18. It was great bourbon. So what was that bourbon? Let me introduce you to the bourbon that got me going into bourbon. Let's see. That bourbon was Eagle Rare. So Eagle Rare, something that I started my bourbon journey with, but even today, if you come to my home, you're going to find Eagle Rare. I still enjoy a pour of Eagle Rare. So Eagle Rare today is made by Buffalo Trace, 90 proof bourbon, aged 10 years. And I think that 10 years is what makes it a great bourbon. Think about where can you have found in 2009 a bourbon for $18 that was aged 10 years. But the other unique thing, this is mash bill number 1, which is a low-rye mash bill, Buffalo Trace. I'm talking about the mash bill. And another unique thing about this was the barrels were American oak, but they were heavy charred. So that heavy char gave it a lot of ridges, like the skin of a crocodile. And in fact, that char is called the crocodile char, but those dip ridges gave the bourbon a chance to interact with the wood. And that interaction with the wood is what gave it that complex flavors that we experience today in Eagle Rare. So let's give it a taste. And we're going to talk about the taste, but after that, watch the rest of the video because I'm going to talk about the history of this brand. It's fascinating. What was interesting as I opened the cork was I could smell the citrusy smells right off the get-go. And that's interesting because, there's quite a bit of bourbon gone from this bottle, but that smell, the citrus smell is still very strong. So very interesting smells. You can still feel that orange peel smell, but you're feeling also, I get a honey note, a vanilla note, and I think that's because it's mash bill 1, low rye. Let's give it a taste. Yeah. So initially, I get that sweet and nutty taste. And I think nutty is coming from the heavy char that's giving more interaction with the wood. The sweet's coming from the mash bill 1. But there's a hint of, in the middle part of the palate, there is that little spice that pops up. So really fun. But it's that end also that's interesting. I'm going to have this again to really confirm that ending. So that ending is it starts bringing out the leathery chocolate notes, which again I think the chocolate leathery comes from that heavy char, but the sweetness comes from the mash bill. Again, great deep complex both in the nose and the palate with this bourbon. Uh, Now let's talk about the history of this bourbon. So this bourbon originally was started in 1975 by a company called Seagram and the master distiller, Charles Beam, who was the great grandnephew of Gene Beam. He created the Eagle Rare brand back then. This is what the bottle looked like. It was actually not a 90 proof, it was a 101 proof bourbon. Really great bourbon. We'll taste it in a different episode. And one thing about this bourbon, so Seagram made this at a distillery called the Old Apprentice Distillery. So the Old Apprentice Distillery still exists today, but it is the Four Roses Distillery. So think about that. We've all been to the Four Roses Distillery, the Spanish-looking distillery. That's where Eagle Rare was made by Seagram, by Charles L. Beam, 101 proof bourbon. Then in 1989, Sazerac bought the Eagle Rare brand from Seagram. Now in 1989, Sazerac did not own a distillery. Think about that today. Sazerac owns a number of distilleries across the world, but in '89 it didn't own one distillery in the United States. So what does it do? It starts making this bourbon at the Heaven Hill Distillery. Till 1992, as many of you know, in 1992, Sazerac bought George T. Stagg Distillery. If you recall, I covered a little bit of that in episode 1 with the Flashman Distillery and what was going on prior to Sazerac buying it. But in 1992, Sazerac buys that distillery, eventually brands that as Buffalo Trace Distillery, and the production of Eagle Rare moves to that distillery. At that time, it was marketed as a single barrel. So think about that. 101 proof single barrel like Blanton's marketed out there. I think that would have been a phenomenal bourbon. Then in March of 2005, Buffalo Trace changed the brand to a 90 proof bourbon, a batch proof. That's what we know today. 90 proof batch, mash bill number 1, great bourbon. It's an awesome bourbon. Hopefully, you've enjoyed this episode with me, and hopefully, you've enjoyed an Eagle Rare in your time, and maybe when having a pour with me today. If not, maybe you should go back to your bar and pull out that Eagle Rare. Cheers, everyone. See you tomorrow.